The silver wheelchair caught every flash of light in the packed gymnasium, but its occupant had become a ghost among the living. Navy blue graduation gowns swirled around her like ocean waves as families embraced, tears of joy streaming down proud faces. She sat perfectly still, spine straight, hands folded with practiced precision over legs that betrayed nothing. The empty chairs behind her screamed louder than any celebration. Ben Hartley's weathered fingers traced the radio clipped to his security uniform, eyes scanning exit routes with military precision. 9-year-old Logan hunched over his sketchbook in the corner, red hair catching fluorescent light as his pencil moved in careful strokes. "Daddy, why does that girl look like she's drowning?" The child's words sliced through Ben's chest like glass. Across the sea of caps and gowns, their eyes met for one electric moment. Hers held secrets that could shatter worlds. Ben's radio clattered to the floor as he abandoned his post and walked straight towards the girl who sat like a queen without a kingdom. Every step across the polished gymnasium floor felt like walking through quicksand. Ben's work boots squeaked against the waxed surface, drawing curious glances from nearby families. His security badge swayed with each stride, catching the harsh fluorescent light that made everything look too bright, too exposed. The girl's head turned slightly as he approached, blue eyes tracking his movement with the wariness of a wounded animal. Her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on the chrome wheel rims. 2 years of working security at Millbrook High School had taught Ben to read people quickly. Troublemakers had a particular swagger. Anxious parents fidgeted with their phones. This girl displayed neither quality, holding herself with the rigid composure of someone who had learned to hide in plain sight. The navy graduation gown hung loose around her shoulders, making her appear smaller than she was. A single tear track had dried on her left cheek, so faint it might have been a trick of the light. "Excuse me," Ben said, his voice rougher than intended. The words felt clumsy in his mouth, like speaking a foreign language after years of silence. "Are you okay?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to acknowledge. Around them, the symphony of graduation continued with camera shutters clicking rapid fire and parents calling out directions for poses. But in their small bubble of space, time seemed suspended like amber, preserving a fragile moment. The girl's eyes widened, and for a heartbeat, Ben saw past the careful mask she wore. Surprise flickered across her features before being quickly suppressed, lips parting slightly, as if she had forgotten how to form words when someone actually spoke to her. She began, then stopped, her voice carrying the refined accent of private tutors and exclusive prep schools. "I'm fine, thank you." The lie fell flat between them, obvious and painful as a broken bone showing through skin. Logan appeared at Ben's elbow like a small tornado, his sketchbook clutched against his chest. The boy's freckled face was flushed with excitement and curiosity, sneakers untied again with laces trailing behind him like streamers. "Hi, I'm Logan," he announced, extending his hand with the fearless confidence that only 9-year-olds possessed. "Why are you sitting by yourself? Don't you have any family here?" The questions tumbled out before Ben could stop them, each one landing like a stone thrown into still water. "Logan," Ben warned, but the girl was already smiling. It was a fragile thing, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, transforming her whole face and revealing the teenager she should have been allowed to be. "Hello, Logan. I'm Abby," she said, shaking his small hand with surprising gentleness. "I do have family. They're just busy." The pause before busy stretched long enough to drive a truck through, heavy with implications that made Ben's chest tighten with recognition. "Busy doing what? This is your graduation," Logan said with devastating 9-year-old logic. Abby's smile flickered like a candle in the wind, her fingers resuming their unconscious gripping of the wheelchair's arms. Ben watched the careful walls she had built start to crack under the honest scrutiny of a child who had never learned that some truths were too painful to speak aloud. The noise of the celebration seemed to grow louder around them, as if the universe was emphasizing her isolation with cruel precision. Sometimes people get caught up in their own worlds, Abby said with surgical precision, each word chosen carefully like someone walking through a minefield. They forget that other people might need them. Logan frowned, clearly unsatisfied with this explanation that made no sense in his universe of unconditional love. Ben recognized the look from when he had tried to explain why Mommy wasn't coming home from the hospital, that bewildered expression children wore when adult logic failed to compute. "That's stupid," Logan announced with characteristic bluntness. "Graduations are important. Mommy would have come to mine if she was still alive." The words hit Ben like a physical blow. 2 years later, and Logan still spoke about Rachel in the present tense sometimes. Abby's eyes sharpened, focusing on Logan with new interest that seemed to cut through her careful composure. "Your mother died?" she asked gently, devoid of the pity that usually accompanied such inquiries from adults who didn't know what to do with grief. "Car accident when I was 7, Logan said matter-of-factly, gesturing toward Ben with obvious pride. "Daddy takes care of me now. He works here at night so I can come with him after school." His unwavering faith in Ben was both a blessing and a crushing responsibility, the boy having no idea how many nights Ben lay awake wondering if he was enough. Abby studied Ben with new eyes, taking in the tired lines around his face, the careful way he positioned himself between Logan and potential threats. "I'm sorry for your loss," Abby said, and Ben heard genuine understanding in her voice, not hollow condolences offered because they felt obligated, but the recognition of someone who knew grief intimately, who understood that some wounds never fully healed. It must be difficult, managing everything alone. The observation was made without judgment, just acknowledgement of a hard truth that most people preferred to ignore or minimize with platitudes about strength and resilience. Ben found himself saying more than usual. "We manage. Some days are easier than others." Something in Abby's expression invited confidences, maybe the way she listened without trying to fix things, or the recognition in her eyes that suggested she understood broken families better than most. Logan bounced on his toes, clearly ready to move past the heavy conversation with the natural resilience of childhood. "Do you want to see my picture? I drew the graduation." Logan thrust his sketchbook toward Abby before she could respond, the drawing remarkably detailed for a 9-year-old's work. Rows of graduates filled the page, but in the corner he had drawn a girl in a wheelchair, separated from the others by careful white space. Even Logan's innocent eyes had seen her isolation, capturing it with the brutal honesty that children brought to their art. Abby's breath caught as she studied the drawing, her finger tracing the edges of the solitary figure. "This is very good, Logan. You have real talent," she said, voice thick with emotion she was trying to suppress. "May I ask why you drew me separate from everyone else?" The question was delivered with scientific curiosity, as if she was conducting an experiment on perception rather than confronting her own loneliness. Logan tilted his head with the seriousness of someone explaining something obvious to confused adults. "Because that's how you were sitting. All by yourself. It looked sad," he said with devastating simplicity. "Are you sad?" The direct question hung in the air like smoke, and Ben watched Abby struggle with how to answer a child who had stripped away all pretense. Her training in polite deflection warred with Logan's innocent honesty, leaving her nowhere to hide from the truth he had so casually exposed. Sometimes I get very sad," Abby admitted finally, the single word carrying the weight of years. Logan nodded as if this made perfect sense, his 9-year-old brain making connections that adults missed in their complicated calculations. "Daddy gets sad too, especially when he looks at pictures of Mommy, but ice cream helps. Do you like ice cream?" The rapid subject change was pure Logan, offering solutions with the confidence of someone who believed most problems could be solved with simple kindness. A real smile broke across Abby's face, the first genuine expression Ben had seen from her. "I love ice cream. I haven't had any in a very long time." The admission slipped out before she could stop it, revealing more than she intended about a life where simple pleasures had become rare luxuries. Ben filed away this information, wondering what kind of existence this girl led where ice cream was forbidden territory. "Daddy, can Abby come get ice cream with us?" Logan asked with pleading eyes. "Please. She doesn't have anyone to celebrate with." The request was so earnest, so completely Logan, that Ben felt his heart crack a little. His son's capacity for compassion never ceased to amaze him, this unwavering belief that kindness was always the right choice, even when the world made it complicated and dangerous. Ben looked at Abby, seeing longing war with something that looked like fear in her expression. "We usually go to Sweetberry after events like this. You're welcome to join us if you'd like." He was stepping outside his comfort zone, inviting complications into their carefully ordered life. But something about this girl called to the part of him that remembered being lost and alone. Her hands twisted in her lap, nervous gesture speaking of internal conflict between desire and obligation. "I shouldn't," she said, but her eyes said otherwise. "I have to be home by 8, and I don't know if my father would approve of—" She gestured vaguely between herself and them, unable to finish the sentence that would reveal too much about the restrictions governing her life. The arbitrary time limit felt like a cage, another invisible barrier in what Ben was beginning to suspect was a very controlled existence. "Of what? Of being nice to us?" Logan asked with genuine confusion. The question was delivered with such innocent bewilderment that Abby flinched, struggling with how to explain class differences to a child without sounding cruel. How did you tell a 9-year-old that some people believed others weren't worthy of their time? The silence stretched uncomfortably as she searched for words that wouldn't shatter Logan's faith in human decency. "Some people have very specific ideas about who their children should spend time with," Abby said finally, choosing words with surgical precision. "My father is one of those people." The admission cost her something visible, shoulders tensing as she revealed family secrets to strangers. She was crossing lines that had probably been drawn very firmly around her entire life, stepping into territory that would have consequences she couldn't yet calculate. Logan processed this information with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice deliberating constitutional law. "That's dumb," he announced finally. "People are people. Mommy always said the only thing that matters is if someone is kind." He looked between Ben and Abby as if this settled the matter completely, channeling Rachel's gentle wisdom through his unshakable moral compass that refused to acknowledge artificial distinctions between human beings. Abby's eyes filled with tears, she quickly blinked away, clearly moved by the simple philosophy that had guided Logan's short life. "Your mother sounds like she was a very wise woman. I think she would have liked ice cream with friends." It was the closest thing to acceptance she could offer, without directly defying whatever invisible authority governed her existence. Careful navigation of someone who had learned to find freedom in the spaces between rules. "So you'll come?" Logan pressed, immune to subtlety and adult complications. His excitement was infectious, bouncing on his toes as he waited for a definitive answer that would seal their unlikely friendship. Ben found himself hoping she would say yes, though he couldn't quite articulate why beyond the recognition of a kindred spirit who understood loss and the healing power of simple human connection. Abby looked around the gymnasium one more time, taking in the families still celebrating, photographers capturing perfect moments, friends making plans for parties she would never attend. Her decision seemed to crystallize in that moment, spine straightening with newfound resolve that transformed her entire bearing. "Yes," she said, the word carrying more weight than any simple acceptance should. "I would like that very much." Logan whooped with delight, and Ben felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of muscles he hadn't realized were clenched. But before they could take a step towards the exit, Ben's radio crackled to life with sharp authority. "Security to main office! Security to main office immediately!" The voice cut through the celebration like a blade, and Ben's stomach dropped as he realized he had abandoned his post to chase after a lonely girl. In 2 years of employment, he had never been called to the office, and his job, their health insurance, Logan's stability balanced on this moment like a house of cards in a hurricane. "I have to go," Ben said, grabbing his radio with hands that weren't quite steady. "Logan, stay with Abby. Don't move from this spot." He was already backing away, torn between responsibility and the growing certainty that walking away from this girl now would be a mistake he would regret forever. Abby's face had shuttered again, the brief moment of openness disappearing behind familiar walls as she recognized abandonment with the expertise of someone who had experienced it repeatedly. Principal Morrison's office felt like a tomb compared to the celebration in the gymnasium. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in sickly green tint that made even healthy people look ill. Morrison sat behind her desk like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence. Grey hair pulled back in a bun so tight it seemed to stretch her features. Her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose like a weapon as Ben stood in the doorway, hat in hand, knowing his career was about to end. "Mr. Hartley, please sit down," Morrison said without looking up from papers on her desk. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 30 years managing teenagers and had run out of patience for nonsense. Ben took the chair across from her desk, the same chair where troubled students received detention slips and disappointed parents heard about their children's failures. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was now on the wrong side of this familiar conversation. "Security cameras show you abandoning your assigned position during a major school event," Morrison continued, finally raising her eyes to meet his. Behind her glasses, they were the color of winter ice, offering no warmth or forgiveness. "Can you explain this lapse in judgment?" The question was delivered with surgical precision, designed to extract confession without offering any possibility of redemption or understanding for the human motivations behind his actions. Ben's mouth went dry as 2 years of steady employment crumbled before his eyes. "There was a student who appeared to be in distress. I felt it was my duty to check on her welfare," he said carefully, knowing it sounded weak even to his own ears. The explanation felt inadequate against the weight of institutional protocol and professional expectations that didn't account for acts of human kindness during working hours. "A student," Morrison repeated, tone suggesting she found this explanation less than convincing. "And this student required the immediate attention of our security personnel. Was there a threat to her safety? A medical emergency?" Each question landed like a physical blow, stripping away Ben's dignity layer by layer while building a case for professional incompetence that he couldn't effectively defend with simple appeals to compassion. "She was alone at her own graduation," Ben said, the words feeling inadequate the moment they left his mouth. She looked like someone who needed help. It was the truth, but truth and justification were often different things in administrative offices where policies mattered more than people and protocol trumped human decency every time without exception. Morrison studied him with calculating eyes, trying to determine if he was dangerously incompetent or merely stupid. "Mr. Hartley, you were hired to monitor exits and maintain security, not to provide emotional support to our students. We have trained counselors for that purpose." Her tone suggested that Ben had committed a category error so fundamental that it called his basic competence into question and made her wonder about his fitness for continued employment. "The student you were so concerned about," Morrison said finally. "Can you describe her?" The question felt like a trap, but Ben couldn't see how honesty could make his situation any worse than it already was. He described Abby as best he could, watching something shift in Morrison's expression as recognition dawned. "Abigail Pemberton," she said quietly, more to herself than to Ben. "I should have known." The name meant nothing to Ben, but clearly carried significant weight in Morrison's world. She removed her glasses and rubbed her temples, as if fighting off a headache that had been building all day. "Mr. Hartley, the student you approached is the daughter of Robert Pemberton. Pemberton Industries, one of the largest corporations in Connecticut and the single largest donor to our school district." The information settled over Ben like a lead blanket, making him realize he had stumbled into a political minefield without a map. Morrison's expression shifted from annoyance to something approaching sympathy, though it was hard to tell through the administrative mask she wore. "For what it's worth, Mr. Hartley, your instincts weren't wrong. That girl has been drowning for years, and we've all been too scared of her father to throw her a rope." The admission was delivered quietly, almost as if she was confessing a sin she had carried for too long. When Ben returned to the gymnasium, he found Logan and Abby exactly where he had left them. His son was showing her more drawings, chattering about his favorite subjects, while Abby listened with the focused attention of someone starved for normal conversation. The sight of them together made Ben's chest tighten with emotion he couldn't quite name. This unlikely friendship between his grieving son and this isolated girl who had found common ground in their mutual understanding of loneliness. "The ice cream offer still stands," Ben said, surprising himself with his resolve. "If you want to come." It was a small rebellion against the forces trying to keep them apart, but it felt like the most important choice he had made in years. Abby's eyes searched his face for signs of obligation or pity, clearly expecting to be abandoned now that adult complications had intruded on their simple moment of connection. As they prepared to leave, Abby gestured toward a black Mercedes sedan that sat in perfect isolation in the parking lot. "That's Marcus, my driver," she explained. "He's been taking me places since I was little." The car represented more money than Ben made in 2 years, a casual display of wealth that put their modest Honda to shame while highlighting the vast economic gulf between their worlds. Sweetberry occupied a corner building on Main Street, its hand-painted sign and red, checkered awnings giving it the timeless charm of small-town America. Ben had been bringing Logan here since he was old enough to sit in a high chair, making it their special place for celebrations and comfort alike. Mrs. Chen looked up from behind the counter with a welcoming smile, but Ben noticed how other customers' conversations quieted as Abby entered, her presence changing the atmosphere in ways that made him suddenly protective. "What can I get for you, dear?" Mrs. Chen asked Abby with diplomatic grace. "I'm not sure," Abby admitted, studying the menu with intense concentration. "I haven't had ice cream in so long. I don't remember what I like." The confession was delivered with matter-of-fact sadness that made Ben wonder what kind of life this girl had been living, where simple pleasures had become forgotten experiences. Logan took charge with the confidence of a true connoisseur. "You should try the chocolate chip cookie dough. It's the best." His enthusiasm was overwhelming and completely genuine, watching Abby's face transform as she took her first bite and closed her eyes in genuine pleasure. For a moment, she looked like any other 18-year-old girl enjoying ice cream with friends, the careful mask slipping to reveal someone young and vulnerable beneath the practiced composure. The peaceful moment shattered when a tall man in an expensive suit appeared beside their table like a dark cloud blocking the sun. His presence changed the temperature of the room by several degrees, sharp features carved from the kind of confidence that came with never being told no. "Abigail," he said, voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. "I've been looking for you." Abby's transformation was instantaneous and complete. The relaxed teenager disappeared, replaced by someone who looked like she was preparing for battle, spine straightening and hands clasping together with white-knuckled precision. "Hello, Father," she said, her voice carefully stripped of emotion, while her face assumed the blank expression of someone who had learned to reveal nothing under scrutiny. Robert Pemberton looked around the ice cream parlor with disgusted expression of someone who had discovered something unpleasant on the bottom of his shoe. His gaze lingered on Ben's work uniform, Logan's grass-stained sneakers, and the general atmosphere of middle-class contentment with obvious distaste that made no attempt to hide his contempt for their modest circumstances and simple pleasures. "You were supposed to come directly home after the ceremony," Pemberton said, his attention returning to his daughter with prosecutorial intensity. "Marcus informed me that you had made some acquaintances." The pause before acquaintances suggested that he found the concept both surprising and unwelcome, as if his daughter socializing with anyone was an unexpected development that required immediate correction. Logan, who had been watching this exchange with growing confusion and distress, suddenly spoke up with fierce loyalty. "She's not with strangers. She's with us. We're her friends." The declaration was delivered with the absolute certainty of childhood, a 9-year-old's attempt to defend someone he had claimed as his own. Ben felt pride and terror in equal measure, watching his son step into a conflict he couldn't possibly understand. Pemberton's attention shifted to Logan, with focused intensity of a predator identifying new prey. "And you are?" he asked with the tone of someone requesting credentials from an unwelcome visitor. "I'm Logan Hartley," his son replied with characteristic directness. "This is my daddy, Ben. We work at the school, and we invited Abby for ice cream because she was sitting all alone at graduation." "I see," Pemberton said, turning his attention to Ben with calculating stare of someone conducting a hostile appraisal. "And you're employed by the school district in what capacity?" The question was designed to establish hierarchy, to put Ben in his proper place before proceeding with whatever judgment was about to be rendered. "Security," Ben replied, standing despite the disadvantage it created. "I'm head of evening security for the high school." "Security," Pemberton repeated, the word dripping with disdain. "And you felt it appropriate to approach my daughter during a school function, to invite her to socialize with your family?" Each question was delivered with prosecutorial precision, building a case for impropriety that Ben couldn't effectively defend, while the entire ice cream parlor fell silent to listen to drama that was far more interesting than their own conversations. "She was alone," Ben said, fighting to keep his voice steady against the tide of humiliation washing over him. "She looked like she needed a friend." It was a pathetically simple explanation for what was clearly being treated as a serious transgression, but it was the only truth he had to offer in the face of Pemberton's obvious displeasure. Pemberton's smile was thin and predatory, the expression of someone who had been hoping for exactly this kind of challenge. "Mr. Hartley, let me educate you about rights and responsibilities. My daughter is not merely 18 years old. She is the sole heir to a multi-billion-dollar corporation. She has been the target of kidnapping attempts, extortion schemes, and various forms of exploitation since she was old enough to walk." The explanation landed like a physical blow, recontextualizing everything Ben thought he understood about their situation. "We don't want anything from her," Logan said desperately, his voice small but determined. "We just like her. She's nice, and she was sad, and friends help friends when they're sad." The simple declaration cut through complex adult rationalizations like a sword through silk, reducing the situation to its emotional core with devastating clarity that made everyone uncomfortable. Pemberton looked down at Logan with something that might have been grudging respect. "Perhaps not. But how long before someone offers your father money for information about my daughter? How long before photographers start following you? How long before your simple friendship becomes a liability that costs her safety and privacy?" The scenario he painted was terrifying in its plausibility, making Ben realize that his moment of kindness might have created vulnerabilities that could be exploited by people with far worse motives. "But we're already friends," Logan said with stubborn determination, clinging to simple truth that adults were complicating beyond recognition. "We already care about each other. That's not going to change just because other people are mean." His logic was unassailable and completely irrelevant to the adult world of calculated risks and protective strategies that governed lives like Abby's. Abby finally spoke, her voice carrying resignation that was heartbreaking in its completeness. "Logan's right, Father. We are friends, and that's exactly why this has to stop." She looked at Ben and Logan with eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. "I can't put them in danger just because I wanted to feel normal for one afternoon." The casual nobility of her sacrifice was devastating, revealing strength forged in circumstances no child should have to endure. Logan walked directly to Abby's wheelchair and pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "I made this for you," he said with solemn dignity. "It's the picture I drew of your graduation. I want you to have it so you remember that someone was happy you graduated." The gesture was so pure, so completely Logan, that Ben felt tears gathering in his eyes while watching his son offer the only gift he had. "Thank you," Abby whispered, her voice thick with emotion she could no longer suppress. "This is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me." The confession slipped out before she could stop it, revealing a life where genuine gestures of friendship were so rare they became treasures to be hoarded against future loneliness and protected from the forces that would steal even these small moments of connection. Pemberton guided his daughter towards the door, noting how her shoulders curved inward as if protecting herself from invisible blows. The man who commanded billions of dollars in corporate resources couldn't protect his daughter from loneliness, couldn't buy her the simple friendship that Logan had offered freely and without calculation. The irony was lost on Pemberton, but painfully obvious to everyone else watching this tragedy unfold. The drive home was conducted in unusual silence, Logan staring out the window while Ben navigated streets that seemed different somehow, as if their encounter with the Pemberton family had changed the landscape itself. Their house sat on Maple Street like a modest shrine to middle-class contentment, its small yard and practical furnishings suddenly feeling precious rather than inadequate after Pemberton's casual dismissal of their lifestyle had paradoxically made Ben more grateful for what they had built together. "Daddy," Logan said as they climbed the front steps, "do you think Abby is happy in her big house with all her money?" The question was asked with genuine curiosity rather than judgment, a child's attempt to understand how wealth related to contentment and why someone with everything could seem so desperately sad. Ben paused with his key in the lock, considering how to answer honestly without feeding cynicism about the world. "I think she has everything money can buy, but some of the most important things in life can't be bought," Ben said carefully. It was a cliché, but like most clichés, it contained enough truth to be useful for a 9-year-old trying to make sense of adult complexities. Logan nodded, as if this confirmed something he had already suspected about the relationship between possessions and happiness. filing away another lesson about what really mattered in life. 3 months later, as autumn painted Millbrook in shades of gold and red, Ben was performing his evening security rounds when he noticed something unusual tucked into the fence around the school's memorial garden. A small envelope with Logan written on it in careful script contained a drawing of remarkable skill, Abby's artistic interpretation of Logan's graduation picture rendered with professional technique but amateur heart that spoke of genuine affection and careful attention to detail. At the bottom, in handwriting that managed to be both elegant and childlike, was a simple message that made Ben's chest tighten with emotion. "Thank you for showing me what friendship looks like. I practice smiling every day now, and sometimes I even mean it. Love, Abby." Ben folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into his pocket, a secret gift that bridged the gap between their separated worlds and proved that love could cross any divide. He never told Logan about the drawing, understanding instinctively that some gifts were meant to be treasured in private. But that night, as he tucked his son into bed, Logan looked up with eyes that seemed older than his years and asked, "Daddy, do you think Abby remembers us?" The question was delivered with careful hope of someone who feared disappointment, but couldn't help wishing anyway for connections that transcended circumstances. "I think real friendship doesn't disappear just because people can't be together," Ben said carefully, offering the closest thing to truth he could manage. "I think she carries us with her the same way we carry her with us." It was a promise that love persisted even when circumstances made it invisible, that some connections were strong enough to survive separation and the forces that tried to keep people apart. Logan smiled and closed his eyes, apparently satisfied with this explanation of how love worked in a complicated world. Ben turned off the light and stood in the doorway, watching his son sleep and thinking about the girl across town who was probably looking at stars through her bedroom window, remembering an afternoon when 3 strangers had become friends over ice cream and simple kindness that changed everything without changing anything at all. The next morning, Ben found Logan in the kitchen preparing an extra place setting with unconscious optimism of someone who believed good things could happen without warning. When Ben asked about the extra plate, Logan smiled and said, "In case someone needs a friend today." It was a lesson worth learning, to always be ready for friendship even when the world seemed designed to make it impossible, to remember that everyone deserved ice cream and someone to celebrate their graduations. Some stories don't have endings, Ben realized. They just have pauses, moments when characters disappear from view but continue living their lives in parallel universes that occasionally intersect through small miracles and unexpected grace. What mattered was the willingness to see someone sitting alone and choose to walk toward them instead of away. Logan's unwavering belief that kindness was always the right choice, and remembering that some afternoons change everything, even when they seem to change nothing at all,